Hello, friends! I have a quick video for you today to review the situation in Iran. As some of you know, I predicted in 2022 that regime change would come to Iran on March 1st, 2026. It was on February 28th, just one day earlier than I predicted, that the United States and Israel bombed Iran and killed Ayatollah Khamenei. As I said in that video 3.5 years ago, the people, the protesters of Iran, need to be very careful what they ask for, and then they need to be doubly careful what they accept from established leadership as fulfillment of their demands. I'm saying that again now. I'm Marie Schoeppel, and this is Global Trends and Cycles, bringing you astrological forecasts for geopolitics and your personal life. I'm sure there was relief, at least at first, among many, that Khamenei is gone. But he's been replaced by his son, who has deep ties to the Revolutionary Guard, especially their intelligence apparatus. I examined the chart for the Guard in that previous video also, and there were obvious signs that much jostling for power would already be going on in 2024 and 2025, and that the Guard were poised to play an even bigger role in Iran's leadership. I'll be analyzing their chart in this video also. So far, there's been a brutal shakeup, and a new Islamic leader has been installed. But is this the true regime change that the Iranian people really wanted? The new supreme leader was obviously the first choice of the Revolutionary Guard, but will he last? Is this truly end of story for leadership change in Iran? As the U.S. instigated this, and as history has shown in Iraq and Afghanistan, the U.S. will want to have a say, a big say, in who rules Iran and how they rule. This story is far from over, and there's extreme drama coming in the fall of 2026. So let's dive into this. First, just to recap why I predicted March 1st, 2026 as bringing regime change to Iran. The October 7th, 1906 birth chart for Iran is the chart that I have found to be the most accurate for prediction. Looking at progressions and transits to this chart for February 28, 2026, note the positions of transiting Mars, 28 degrees Aquarius, and transiting Uranus, 28 degrees Taurus. Note also that progressed Mars is at 29 degrees Scorpio. As I explained in my previous video, this chart has a sensitive point at 29 degrees 26 minutes of Scorpio. That is the position at which progressed Venus went direct in 1981. This sensitive point is inherent in this chart and is operating throughout the entire lifetime of the entity represented by the chart. Any major planet making a harsh aspect to that point will trigger major upsets for Iran. And on February 28th and March 1st, there was not just one, but 3 planets making harsh aspects to 29 degrees Scorpio. Progressed Mars, transiting Mars, and especially everyone's favorite rebel, with or without a cause, transiting Uranus. Also, note that Saturn and Neptune are conjunct. Their conjunction was exact on February 20th, 2026 at 0 degrees 46 minutes of Aries, and the transiting Sun and North Node are conjunct Iran's natal Saturn, all at 9 degrees Pisces. There's heavy involvement of Mars and Saturn here, so it's all so very authoritarian. When in history did similar configurations occur for Iran? Let's look back at the Saturn-Neptune conjunction of 1953, which occurred in August of that year. For anyone watching who was around at that time, they'll know that was when the Prime Minister of Iran was deposed by a coup d'etat set in motion by Britain and the United States. Britain was the main aggressor in that situation, as they were not happy that Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh had nationalized the oil industry, threatening Britain's oil interests in the region. The CIA organized the coup under the pretext that Mossadegh was grabbing power from the Shah, which was basically true, as Mossadegh had issued a decree dissolving parliament and giving complete power to himself and his cabinet. The coup occurred over 4 days, August 15th through August 19th, 1953, and several different tactics were employed before the coup was successful. This is the chart for August 15th, 1953. Note that the transiting Saturn-Neptune conjunction is conjoined by the Moon at 22 degrees Libra. All three are conjunct the midheaven of the 1906 chart, as well as natal Mercury. Transiting Uranus at 21 degrees Cancer is squaring all of them. What about that sensitive point? Note that the progressed Sun at 0 degrees Sagittarius has just passed over that sensitive point in the prior months. The progressed part of fortune is at 29 degrees Taurus, opposing the sensitive point and triggering its effects in August 1953. For those who aren't familiar with the part of fortune, it is a synthetic point, which means it is calculated using the positions of the Sun, Moon, and Ascendant of a chart. So it combines the three most important positions into a composite position. The part of fortune denotes just that, the overall success or failure of the subject of the chart, as the progressed part of fortune opposes the sensitive point and the progressed Sun. It is detrimental to the leaders, the Sun of Iran. Here we have the chart of an event that really changed the course of Iran's history. By removing Mossadegh, Britain and the U.S. gave more power to the Shah, and we all know where that situation went. Cheap oil and the Shah's allegiance to the U.S. in exchange for the U.S. selling weapons to Iran and giving them the resources to begin a civilian nuclear power program, created a situation that understandably was resented by the people of Iran and thus led to the revolution. I remember those days of the 1970s before the Shah was deposed in 1979. Gasoline was really cheap in the United States, and I mean really cheap, as in 8 cents a gallon. Yes, people, you heard that right. I paid 8 cents a gallon for gas. For $1, I could fill the tank of my VW Bug and ride into the sunset. And let's quickly look at the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which was really a triple conjunction of Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus over 1989-1991, around 12 degrees of Capricorn. This was square Iran's natal Sun at 13 degrees Libra. Ayatollah Khamenei died on June 3, 1989. If I was an Ayatollah, I'd be very leery of those Saturn-Neptune conjunctions, as they seem to act as death's henchmen for Islamic clergy. But the events of mid-August 1953 led to the current situation. The Iranian people resented the collusion between the Shah's government and the U.S., which led to the revolution, which led to what Iran has now. Note the Sun-Pluto conjunction. On August 15, 1953, in the 8th house, the house of supposedly shared resources. This conjunction says it all against the backdrop of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. A financial partner, much more powerful than you, has decided to make an offer you can't refuse. I could show more interesting astrological evidence of how August 1953 led to March 2026, but I have to keep this video short. Suffice it to say, History is repeating itself right now. Trump claims that the Iranian people now have their chance to install a new regime that they like. But do they really? The last time these same configurations of 2026 occurred, the Iranian people had very little say in what happened next. The U.S. gained an unhealthy advantage over Iranian resources and governance. I pray it doesn't go to that extreme again. Let's switch to the chart for the Revolutionary Guard, which indicates that there may have been some backroom dealing going on with the Guard, but that's all I'll say about that. On February 28, 2026, the transiting Mars-Uranus square formed a T-square with the Revolutionary Guard's natal moon, 26 degrees Leo. Cancer, the sign ruled by the moon, rules the 12th house, and progressed Mercury in the 12th at 21 degrees Cancer squares the natal Mercury-Mars conjunction 21 degrees Aries, which indicates there's more going on here than meets the eye, due to all that 12th house, hidden behind the scenes activity. Note that transiting Uranus is conjunct progressed Mars, 26 degrees, 27 minutes Taurus, and that progressed Mars is exactly square the natal moon, 26 degrees, 27 minutes Leo. So we've got open enemies, Uranus, ruler of Aquarius, the sign on the cusp of the 7th house, and hidden enemies, the moon, ruler of Cancer, the sign on the cusp of the 12th house. Perhaps there is internal conflict on how to proceed. Note that the Guard's chart has natal Uranus conjunct the natal part of fortune at 20 degrees Scorpio in the 4th house, very descriptive of their role. They are the heavyweights in charge of security, and they also have huge stakes in national industry and businesses. As I said in my video over 3 years ago, any regime change at this time favors the Revolutionary Guard having more power, not less. Transiting Pluto, 4 degrees Aquarius is very near the descendant of this chart. The 7th house rules allies and open enemies, and Pluto will be slowly moving to conjoin the descendant later in 2026 and 2027. Natal Uranus and the part of fortune are in Scorpio, ruled by Pluto, and Pluto is in Aquarius, ruled by Uranus. The Guard has, shall we say, conflicting interests, or maybe more accurately, conflicting masters. Though with that Uranus configuration, they see themselves as masters over others. And now, what was all arranged just as they had set it up to be, is suddenly ripped to shreds. The progressed moon, around 21 degrees Taurus, for February through April 2026, is opposing this natal conjunction. But as the moon denotes the masses, the people of a country, and the Guard is, in many aspects, partners in ruling Iran, this opposition from the progressed moon indicates strong opposition from the people. But with all that Mars energy in these configurations, the brutality of the Guard will be out in force. They really ought to curb that oppression, though, because when the cat is out of the bag, the chickens will come home to roost. That was an interesting mix of metaphors I just used. That is what's been happening in the shadows. That is that 12th house action. Will see the light of day around October 3rd, 2026, when transiting Mars makes it over to 3 degrees Leo and is opposing Pluto. Just to make this day even more dramatic, transiting Mercury forms a T-square with this opposition. What is revealed will fuel the fury of our past oppression and brutality. Now the progressed moon is conjunct progressed Mars, 27 degrees Taurus, and they form a T-square with the transiting nodes. And this is another indication of more protests and crackdowns. Furthermore, Moon conjunct Mars can't keep a secret. Something very dirty will surface, and it's going to hurt the guard in a big way. Transiting Venus has just made her retrograde station at 8 degrees Scorpio on October 3rd, forming a T-square with the guard's natal ascendant-descendant axis. Whatever it is, it's really going to hurt. A woman may be involved. She may be the one who reveals what has been a secret for possibly an entire year. And just to reinforce this interpretation that a woman plays a pivotal role, the progressed moon of the 1906 chart is conjunct Iran's midheaven in early October 2026. And Donald Trump's chart gets a severe shock on this same day, but I won't cover that here. Mars is just a few months away from going retrograde. And that's the backdrop to this. More on that in a minute. The configurations of October and November 2026 portend renewed attacks between Iran and foreign powers, with increasing force being used. October 2026 will upend everything again, so sit tight, my friends, for the battle over who gets to pull the strings in Iran, both behind the scenes and as outright ruler, will rage for quite a while. Iran's new leadership is severely challenged between August 30th and September 1st, as transiting Uranus is opposing the natal sun, and transiting Mars, 13 degrees Cancer, forms a T-square. Note also that transiting Jupiter, 13-14 degrees Leo, is opposing the progressed Sun, 14 degrees Aquarius at the same time, indicating lots of unrest. Mars in Cancer is cranky and very on the defensive, so this new leader has his work cut out for him to prove himself. And that trend heats up as October begins and continues well into 2027. In October, Mars slowing down to go retrograde is the backdrop for all of this, and that's ugly. And the several months as Mars slows down to make its retrograde station are really the worst part of a Mars retrograde. Remember, Mars was about to go retrograde in 2022 when Mahsa Amini was murdered. I've already talked about the crucial date of October 3rd for the Revolutionary Guards chart. Now let's take a look at that same date for Iran's 1906 chart. Note that in addition to the transiting Mars-Pluto opposition, there's a transiting Sun-Saturn opposition that aligns with Iran's natal Sun, 13 degrees Libra. New and probably temporary leadership wants to reverse something, but the people are vehemently opposed to this. Again, this chart shows that events hinge upon a woman, or the status of women, as Venus at her retrograde stationary point is forming a T-square with the natal nodes. These configurations act as a trigger for the opposition that Mars will make to natal Saturn when it goes retrograde at 10 degrees Virgo in January 2027. It's the people versus the security forces once again, and the approaching Mars retrograde indicates staying power on both sides. But this forces more changes to the stagnant status quo of leadership in Iran. The new leadership is weakened by all of this. That may not be the greatest thing at this point, as Iran is trying to stave off even heavier foreign military involvement in running the country. The configurations of October and November of 2026 portend renewed attacks between Iran and foreign powers. Things could be out of control around November 21st, 2026. The transiting Sun conjoins progressed Mars, both exactly on the sensitive point 29 degrees 26 minutes Scorpio, and they are squared by transiting Mars and Jupiter in Leo. This is an indication of aggressive violence by a foreign power, but at the same time, there are domestic protests. Note that transiting Mars on November 21st is conjunct Donald Trump's ascendant, and transiting Jupiter is conjunct his natal Mars. He's already an excitable boy, but these aspects put his dangerous personality into the stratosphere. They could also bring extreme danger to him. As for domestic protests, note that Venus is now moving direct again, and at 24 Libra, she is conjunct the progressed moon and the midheaven. Iranian women are at the forefront of these protests. There may be extreme violence against women at this time, and yet that's exactly what they are protesting. As Mars moves retrograde, in early 2027, there is a transiting Sun-Pluto conjunction at 5 degrees Aquarius on January 26th. But it is triggered as Venus and Mercury go direct on November 13th, 2026. The effect of this pre-Mars retrograde and the other configurations I'm showing you is that there could be multiple retaliatory attacks between Iran and foreign powers in October and November 2026. And there's probably another change of leadership, a forced change, between November 12th and November 22nd, 2026. In the longer term, there is the trine of transiting Uranus to transiting Pluto, which interacts with Iran's natal moon at 7 degrees Gemini. This is very good for the status of women in Iran to be liberalized. In late July 2027, transiting Mars will be in Libra, forming a grand trine with transiting Uranus and Pluto, a liberating aspect indeed. Yet the Uranus-Pluto trine is still composed of Uranus and Pluto, two planets that favor dictators. Iran may be freed of constrictive Islamic rules over people's everyday lives, but it's the same elites as before who are running the country. The Uranus-Pluto trine makes configurations with the Revolutionary Guard chart that are favorable for the Guard to increase its political power. This trine is part of the Uranus-Pluto cycle that began with their conjunction in 1966 at 16 degrees Virgo. It was conjunct Iran's natal Mars, 15 degrees 40 minutes Virgo. Note that Khamenei began his ascent to power in Iran during the early 1960s, and he rode the wave of the Jupiter-Saturn cycle that began in 1961. Greater freedoms will be granted to the people, but with the backdrop of other heavy configurations, it's really a way to quiet the protests. Leadership is feeling the heat from their own people as well as from foreign powers. Yes, that's been true for years, but now those foreign powers are very involved and possibly on the ground. So Iran's internal leadership needs the cooperation of the people. The Iranian people shouldn't become complacent with this relaxation of some restrictions, because although it does seem to be lasting, it doesn't address the real underlying issue. The Iranian people want a real democracy. It's a tricky situation, as the people shouldn't look to foreign powers to supposedly help their cause. On the longer term, the 29-degree Scorpio sensitive point is triggered in May 2030 by a triple conjunction of the Sun, Mars, and Saturn at 28 degrees Taurus, opposing the sensitive point. The triple conjunction shows a dangerous concentration of power in one person or a small group of people. This is done in a very legal way, although it's obviously an outrageous grab for power, as shown by Uranus and the South Node squaring natal Mars and progressed Saturn. This forms as transiting Neptune, 12 degrees Aries, is forming a T-square with Iran's natal Sun-Neptune square. At this point, it seems that the Islamic clergy are still very much part of the power structure of Iran, but the events triggered by this configuration may sideline them. As for that sensitive point, it is triggered in December 2043 as transiting Pluto, 29 degrees Aquarius, squares the point, and then it is triggered quite dramatically from mid-September through November 2044 as transiting Uranus in Leo and Saturn in Scorpio conjunct the sensitive point, form a square, and they form a loose T-square with Pluto now on the cusp of Pisces. This forebodes a huge transformation of Iran's economy, especially with respect to the oil industry and its contracts with foreign allies. And yes, foreign powers are very involved. What with Uranus in the 8th house? Then, in mid-November 2045, the transiting Uranus-Pluto opposition, which has transiting Jupiter conjunct Pluto in Iran's second house of the economy, indicates a spectacular rejuvenation of Iran's economy, with lots of foreign investment flowing into the country. Note that Pluto has just returned to direct motion on November 15, 2045. But throughout this period of the early 2040s, transiting Uranus is in the 8th house of shared assets and resources. Yeah, investment may be flowing in, but you could say that foreign investment started flowing in on February 28, 2026. Remember what the events of August 15, 1953 led to over the long term. And remember that both time periods had the same major configurations, a Saturn-Neptune conjunction and the 29-degree Scorpio sensitive point being triggered. And it's really the progression of events since 1953 that show how Iran's association with the U.S., which at first actually did have some redeeming features to it, gave way to a serious disregard and underestimation of Iran by its closest Western ally at that time. And this latest provocation by the U.S. doesn't bode well. How to break out of this pattern? Be careful what you accept as fulfillment of your demands as the people of Iran. You're the ones who do the real work and make it all happen. Note that as the Uranus-Pluto opposition occurs, the progressed moon, indicating the people of Iran, is conjunct Iran's natal Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, which denotes Iran's copious oil reserves, but also the heavy influence of religion. Both Jupiter and Neptune rule religion. There may be another wave of religious fervor and influence at this time, and that Jupiter-Pluto conjunction pits that religious fervor directly against foreign involvement. History repeats, my friends, so be careful what you ask for. The people can have a direct say in how the natural resources of Iran are governed and used. That is also indicated by the progressed moon conjunct natal Jupiter and Neptune. So make having that direct say at the top of your list of demands to your leaders in Iran's so-called allies. Thank you for watching today. I hope this analysis helps you navigate these dark times and make decisions about the direction of your own life, as what's happening in Iran is affecting all of us, regardless of where we live. Let's pray that peace will prevail. Bye for now.